Hey kiddos, let's do lesson 29 today. And this is kind of an important lesson because we're going to kind of shift a little bit and work with decimals. So the objective here is to connect division by a unit fraction to division by 1/10 and 1/100th, but we're talking about decimals. So I have something really important today. And it's just a hint about working with the long division standard algorithm and the importance of moving the decimal out. So why can we do that? Why are we supposed to do that? And how do we understand the background? So this is kind of the background behind it. So let's take a whole number like 45, and you're going to divide it by 1/10. Now this goes back to Module 1, Lesson 1. Okay, what happens when you are dividing by 1 or 10 or 100? If I'm dividing, I am shifting the place value positions into smaller digits because I'm dividing by 1/10. So this was our place value chart at the beginning of the year, 4 10s, 5 1s. And we shift to the right because we divided. That means we're splitting it into pieces. And it's one place value position. So we started with 45, we end up with 4.5. If I continued to divide, if I divided it by 1/100th, then it would be 2 shifts. Okay, 45, 2 shifts would end up here. So that's not really, you don't have to show that today. That's just a reminder of what you can do when you divide by decimals because it's been a while. So another one, let's take what we've been doing lately and let's transform the decimals into fractions so that you can kind of feel a refresher that's a little bit more recent. 7 divided by 1/10 would be rewritten in fraction form. So 7 over 1, because this is a whole number, and I can take my 1/10 and multiply by the reciprocal and get my answer. So today they have a whole bunch of these statements where you're just showing that you understand what the numbers are made of. So if it says how many tenths are in one whole, well, you take one whole and you break it into 10 parts. And if they say how many of these guys are there, then you know that there are 10 tenths in one. So how many tenths are in 7 wholes? Well, it's really just taking that 10 and multiplying by 7 to show that there are 70 tenths. Now that's all well and good and easy, and then they start giving you, okay, well, if you understand that, then let's have a look at a decimal that has, more digits with value instead of just a 7 or just 45. So 7.4 divided by 1/10. So what if I have this divided by this, change it to fraction form, but I still have 70 tenths in 7 wholes here only. But then you're also going to break out the tenths place. And so they'll say, well, how many tenths are in 4/10? And it's confusing for kids because why would they think they need to put the same number where they already said it? So that's confusing. That's the first confusing part about this lesson. But basically what they're saying is, hey, the number is 74. Remember when we were renaming these things with decimals into the units and I would say, it's 74 tenths. Okay, so we're really just renaming it in unit form and taking that decimal apart and calling it the place value position where the last digit falls. Now in fraction form, what does this look like? You take your 74 tenths like you would if it was in unit form, divide by 1/10, and then here's the unit form of the whole thing that we just wrote. 74 tenths divided by 1/10 is 74. Tenths divided by tenths will give you ones, and so that's one part of today's lesson. Now, put that aside because there is another different thing that is actually quite helpful. This is just another year that we were doing a different warm-up, and so same objective, lesson 29, connect division by unit fraction to division by 1/10 and 1/100th. So these are the standard forms. These are the forms we're going to be working with. Standard form, just the number. Unit form, okay, let's talk about. If I have 10 ones, how many tenths is it? Well, it's going to be 100 tenths because the decimal would be here. So it's 100 tenths. So how many tenths are we having? That's the first change. Then fraction form, okay? If I have 100 tenths, what does that look like? It looks like 100 over 10, 100 tenths. What if I have 200 tenths? What does that look like? Well, it's a 200 over 10. What if I have 300? And so on. So what does that look like in decimal form? Okay, and again, that is standard form. You just need to make sure to include the decimal. There we go. Now they're all included. Okay, and so then if I don't have a 0 there, if I have 82 as my number, how many tenths is it? Well, it doesn't have a tenths because this is the decimal and this is nothing. So you can just understand that the 0 is there and it's going to be 820 tenths, and that can still look like this because the 8 is in the tens place, the 2 is in the ones place, and the 0 is in the tenths place, and that is still 820 tenths. In the same way that 642 tenths would be 64.2, and then this is the unit form. Okay, now that's a lot of notes, and I'm sorry, I wish it wasn't so. I actually have a full page of additional notes that I'm not really going to talk about right now, but they are very important for kind of this concept, and we're going to do the work in the book today. Actually, I didn't get out my book, but we're going to do the work in the book today, and it's much more resembling the unit form. This part where we go into the standard algorithm is going to be, why do I get to get rid of the decimal here? And it's because we're going to equally change both the numerator and the denominator when they become a standard algorithm problem, okay? So we're gonna have the ability to multiply by 10 or multiply by 100 in order to transform our problem, and the divisor will be the boss. So if I talk about those things today, that's because I'm going to get into that in probably another video. So let's take a look at what we have today. So on page 301, we are really getting close to the end of the book here. We're supposed to divide, but there's kind of a lot of redundancy. Everyone say redundant. This is what the book does, is it's trying to get you to understand like 12 different ways to say each problem and to understand it. It's supposedly helpful. I think it's kind of confusing for a lot of kids. So just bear with me and we'll do the repetition part and you will see how it works. So we're going to divide. Rewrite each expression as a division sentence. See how we're rewriting it over and over? With a fraction divisor, and then we're going to fill in the blanks. The first one's done for you. So if I have 2 divided by 1/10, it's really just taking this and we rewrite it. And then we rewrite it in fraction form. That's from the notes. And so what do I get when I have 2 divided by 1/10? Well, remember, this is just 2 times the reciprocal. That's where they get 20. Now you have to still understand this. This goes to the tape diagram. There are how many tenths, because you wouldn't know this first, there are how many tenths in one whole? Well, if they tell you tenths, there are going to be 10 of them in one. But then you take that and you can multiply by how many they want you to have. So then it's going to be 10 times 2 is 20, which is what we're doing here. Okay, so it's really easy if you do this part of the keep it, change it, flip it, and to get your answer, and then you can kind of see where you're going with it. Okay, so this is 5 over 1, and then it's going to be divided by the fractional form. You have to rewrite the division sentence with a fraction divisor, and at first, this is the divisor, 1/10. Don't do the keep it, change it, flip it until you actually have the divisor. Okay, write the divisor first. Then keep it, change it, multiply by the reciprocal, and you can see you're supposed to end up with 50. Now, how many tenths are in one whole? And again, we know that there are 10 tenths in one whole because we're breaking it into 10 parts. So take this and multiply it by 5, and you see that you get 50 tenths. So that's not so bad, right? Now let's do that again. If I have 8 over 1, and then I'm dividing by, do the division, 1/10, write it in fraction form, okay? Then multiply by the reciprocal and see that you're supposed to get 80. How many tenths are in a whole? Well, there are 10 tenths in one. So in 8 of those, it would be 80 because it's just like that fraction model in the notes when you just multiply by however many you need. Now that's great when they're nice and even. Let's make it not even. So if I have 5 and 2 tenths, what if I really want to see this in fraction form because I have to have this divisor? So I'm going to take my 5 and 2 tenths and I am going to rename this into, basically I'm skipping over the unit form to get to the fraction form. This is 52 tenths, and rewrite it as a fraction. Divide by the fraction 1/10. Rewrite it, 52 tenths, multiply by the reciprocal, and you get 520. Okay, so 52 tenths divided by 1/10 is 52 tenths divided by, you know what, let me do this, oops, because it was going to be over 10, but I don't want to have more work than I need. So 10 and 10, it should have been 5, it was 520, but then I would have to divide by 10, and I want to do this before I multiply, and that's where I get 52. Okay, so how many tenths are in 5 wholes? Now this time they didn't even bother asking how many are in one because it's like, well, we already know it's going to be 10 tenths in 1 whole. So how many tenths in 5 wholes? Now that's the second part, and again, we already did that one, so don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. Now, how many tenths are in 2 tenths? This is the part where it's like, this is redundant. They're telling you, and so just rewrite it. So how many tenths are in what we started with? Guess what? We already know. It's 52 tenths because it's uniform. That's why this lesson is confusing for a lot of kids. It's because it's very redundant. They want you to put this together with all this. So let's blaze on through here because these are all the same, and it's just really looking at how the numbers are connected. So if I have 8 and 7 tenths divided by 1/10, it's going to be 87 tenths divided by 1/10. Keep it, change the sign, multiply by the reciprocal. Don't leave these tens here to make you multiply. Have a bigger number. We should end up with 87. And so how many tenths are in 8 wholes? Again, that's going to be your 80, just like above. So how many tenths are in 7 tenths? Well, duh, you just gave it to me. And how many tenths are in 8 and 7 tenths? It's 87. We're just renaming it. Next one. Okay, if I have 5 over 1 and it's divided by, look, we have a new fraction divisor that is now 1/100th. Okay, look, they changed the unit form for us. Keep the first, that's all you have, multiply by the reciprocal. So I should have 500. Now, if there are how many hundredths in 1 whole? So you're going to put your 100 hundredths, because that would look like this. There are 100 hundredths in 1 whole. So how many hundredths in 5 wholes? And that's our answer there. Okay, and so moving on, we have 8 over 1. That's terrible. 8 divided by 1/100th. Keep it, change it, flip it. We have 800 over 1, which is 800. Okay, that's going to be our answer. So how many hundredths are in 1 whole? 100 hundredths. There are how many hundredths in 8 wholes? 800 hundredths. Move to the next one. Look always at how many positions. 52 tenths, because we're here in the tenths place. Divided, oh dear. Oh, sorry, always something exciting. I'll try to clear that out. 52 tenths divided by 1/100th. I am okay. There are how many hundredths in 5 wholes? And so it's going to be 500 hundredths in 5 wholes. And then we're going to have how many hundredths in 2 tenths? And again, watch out for your place value positions. Okay, so if I have 2 tenths, how many hundredths are there? So that's going to be 20. So you can make this little cheat thing and check it. There are how many hundredths in 5 ones, 2 tenths, and what? 0 hundredths? So it's going to be 520. Okay, oops, and I didn't even finish this. Look at that. 52 over 10. Keep it, change it, flip it, divide, and that's where you get your 520. Okay, last one on this side. 87 tenths divided by 1 100th. And then how many hundredths in 8 wholes? That's going to be 800. 87 over 10, multiply by the opposite. Do your division first. Use 10 100 as 10 over 1, and then do the multiplication. You get 870. How many hundredths in 7 tenths? That's going to be 70. And then there are, how many hundredths are there? 870. So that's the first page. And I hope after you get going, it kind of makes it a little clearer. Make sure that doesn't happen again. Okay. For the next part, we really just have a whole bunch of work that is going to keep us busy, but it's pretty quick. So we're going to do a lot of keep it, change it, flip it as our simple solution after we have written this in a fraction. So 6 over 1 divided by 1/10. How fast can we go? 6 over 1 times the reciprocal equals 60. Quick. 18 over 1 divided by 1/10. Still thinking about that. 18 over 1 times 10 over 1 equals 180. Bam, you're done. 6 over 1 divided by 1 100th equals 6 over 1 times 100 over 1 equals 600. Bam, you're done. 17 tenths divided by 1/10 equals 17 tenths divided times 10 over 1. Now notice when you have this, you really need to take care of business here. Cross cancel, unless you want to set it up and shift that over, which is essentially cross canceling. 17 times 1 is 17, and then 1 times 1 is 1, but I hardly ever bother writing that because I just want to get to 17 is the answer. 31 is the whole number over 1, and then divided by, what is our, turn this into a fraction, equals 31 over 1 times the reciprocal equals 3100. 11 over 1 divided by 1 100th equals 11 times 100 over 1 equals 1100. And no, I don't put commas in when I only have 4 digits because sometimes it's just annoying. 125 over 1, but I always put commas in if I have 5 digits, divided by 1/10. And 125 over 1 times the reciprocal is 1250. How about this one? Let's have a 100. 374 hundredths divided by 1 100th equals 374 over 100 times the reciprocal. And look how convenient this is. Bam. And 125 tenths divided by 1 100th equals 125 over 10 times 100 over 1. Clear this out, and that gives us 1250. Easy peasy. How about that? Okay, almost done. Young bought $4.60 worth of bubblegum. How are we doing on time here? I can't even see the clock. Okay, hurry up. Young bought $4.60 worth of bubblegum. Each piece of gum cost 10 cents. People will say $10. That's not right. This is the dollars. This is the cents. So it's 10 cents. And it's important that you recognize this is money. When you see that, you have to say money value or dollars or cents. How many pieces of bubble gum did Young buy? So we're going to take our $4.60, which is what he had, and then we're going to divide that by the cost of each, which is decimal. Sorry, I should usually put a 0 there. 0.10. And so take this and turn it into 460 hundredths divided by 1/10. Keep it, change it, flip it, 1 and 10. So always simplify. I don't X it out because it's 460 over 10. And then these cancel out. 460 divided by 10 gives us 46 pieces. Okay, almost done. Cheryl solved a problem. 84 divided by 1/100th equals 8,400. So Jane said your answer is wrong because when you divide, the quotient is always smaller. That's right. Ooh, watch out. Than the whole amount. Now, here is our divisor. Sorry, I stopped. Smaller than the whole amount you start with. For example, 6 divided by 2 is 3. She's looking here. And 100 divided by 4 is 25. And she's looking at the quotient and saying, how can you possibly have a really big quotient? And I would remind you that here is our dividend, and here's the quotient. Here's the dividend, here's the quotient. Here is the dividend, here's the quotient. So we know that this is true. We know that this can be true. But still, who is correct? And so basically, if you take your 84 divided by 1/100th, and you want to see the change happening, you can have 84 over 1 times the reciprocal equals 8,400. And know that we just divided that into hundredths, so how many of them are there? So basically, Cheryl is correct. And Jane is still correct with her examples, but only with her examples. And Jane is sometimes, okay, but it's really about divisors that are fractions or decimal fractions. Can create more parts or a bigger answer. Bigger answer. Sorry, super sloppy. It's like when it gets all crammed in there and I can't get my hand in. Okay, almost done. Last one. The U.S. Mint sells 2 ounces of American Eagle, not clothing, gold coins to a collector. Each coin weighs 1/10 of an ounce. How many gold coins were sold to the collector? Yeah, I hope you guys are all entertained today. Be a subscriber and come back and watch more videos. So we're going to take the 2 ounces and we're going to divide that by the 1/10 of an ounce each. 2 ounces is what they have. Each coin weighs 1/10. That's where I got my whole. That's where I got my part. 2. Multiply by the reciprocal, and you have 20 coins. Yay, all done. And it's just like that. So I hope this was helpful. It's kind of a big lesson. I sure hope you come back for the next couple because they all tie together. I will see you on the next one. Take care, y'all.